Hello class, welcome to Global Power and Politics, our class for the spring semester. I would just like to highlight a couple of items that I'd like you to be aware of. The first is the announcement that I have placed on Blackboard in relation to a highlight for the key themes for this week. And the first one is that we will be looking to address global environmental policy issues. And we will also be looking to address the systems and cycles for this week's presentation. But the first issue I wanted to highlight was some of the items we need to think about in terms of environmental security for this class and for this week. So as you'll notice on the announcement page, I've listed 4 major global environmental policy treaties, environmental agreements. These are agreements that are signed between different countries that speak to global norms and modes of conduct within the international environment, and states are held accountable by different organizations. In this context, I've looked mainly at those that are regulated by the United Nations. One is the 1972 UN Conference on Human Environment, which was held in Stockholm, Sweden. The focus was on the need to address issues of the health of the planet. That led to another environmental agreement in 1982, the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. This relates to international agreements that manage fisheries and marine life. Items like international boundaries, continental shelves, meaning how far out, for example, a country's territorial waters go into the ocean, beyond which it becomes an international shipping space or international ocean space. We then think a year later, 1983, about the Maripol regime on oil waste disposal at the sea, sort of tied again to the 82 Convention, the Law of the Sea. How do you ensure that this common pooled resource, which is the ocean, common pooled resources are those resources that are available in nature that no individual is charged for. So in this context, the sea is a common pooled resource. Air is a common pooled resource. Land is a common pooled resource. The atmosphere, space, those are common pooled resources. So in this case, we're looking at the 1983 and the 1982 UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. 1983 Maripol regime on oil waste disposal in the sea. What can or can you not dispose in the oceans and in the sea? And how do you hold countries accountable for that waste disposal? And very importantly, the 1992 UN Conference on the Environment and Development, which was held in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. We're going to be thinking about the effectiveness of international agreements in relation to solving climate change issues. So, for instance, thinking about what are some of the challenges that are related to international and environmental agreements as they correlate to the United States and to the Trump administration's policy of Make America Great Again. Part of the underpinning assumptions of the Make America Great Again thinking is unilateralism. Uni meaning one, unilateral meaning one country acting on its own to protect its own interests. A lot of these international agreements work well under multilateralism, multi meaning many. In other words, having all different countries cooperate and work together to solve international problems and um, develop key strategies and uh, outcomes for standards for international agreements. So, thinking, for example, about the Paris Accords in relation to climate change and the Trump's administration's resistance to those climate change accords, based, for example, on economic interests, their effects on the US economy, and based on issues of oversight in terms of how do we determine that carbon emissions will be effectively regulated when there is no universal global policeman to ensure that each country is going by or abiding by its carbon emissions. That's a major problem in terms of international agreements. One is enforcement, the other is oversight, and the other is um, the cost to defection. So, for example, what happens when a country decides it will not follow international agreements that it has signed up for? What are the consequences? What can the international regime, systems, and structures do to influence the behavior of countries that decide to go against international agreements like climate change? And on the homepage, I've also provided a link, which is a YouTube link to a debate on climate change and environmental security. And within this YouTube clip, we're thinking about the issue of climate change, not so much as climate change in and of itself, but of climate change within the broader context of environmental security. How do issues of climate change then affect um, environmental security and affect human security? The fact that ocean levels are rising, rivers are drying up. Think, for instance, about the Nile River and issues of climate change, reduction of water levels, and the effects that those have on relations between states. For example, relations between Egypt, which is having very frosty relations currently with Ethiopia, based on the fact that Ethiopia would like to build, or is building, almost completing a mega dam, a huge dam on the River Nile. Egypt's very concerned that with continuing climate change, rising temperatures, the water levels of the Nile are receding, and the construction of a dam in Ethiopia will further threaten water supply to Egypt. So look at the clip, think about some of the arguments in the clip, and assess some of the arguments within the framework of understanding environmental security and the complexities that surround global environmental challenges. The last item I would like to look at this week is just remind you that you have your map quiz, which is available on Blackboard. It will be available um, in the top left-hand corner of the class portal. The map quiz is due on or before 11:59 p.m. On April 26th. Remember also to remain engaged and actively participate by submitting your assignments like this quiz and your final exam, which I will be posting a little later in the semester, and also being active in terms of your posting your contributions to the discussion board for each week. I have listed the discussion board topics for each week on a number of announcement page links, and I've also emailed these out to you. If you don't have those, they're again available on this week's announcement page. We have week 9, where we dealt with international organizations and world order, week 10, which is post-Cold War issues around threats to international peace, nationalism, and ethnic conflicts. Our current week, which is week 12, April 13th through the 19th, and we're addressing issues of resource allocation, global issues of energy, natural resources, and the environment. In your books, that is covered under the tab for the part 3, and that's chapter 9, the quest for peace through international law, collective security, and um, also under part 4, human security, prosperity, and responsibility, which is chapter 14, global responsibility for the preservation of the environment. In my edition, that is page 434, which is in the world politics course text. We also have our future sessions, which is next week, when we'll be dealing with IPE, International Political Economy, issues of development and underdevelopment. We'll be thinking about theories of development. We'll be assessing in week 14, the week after that, globalization and its discontent. The theme of globalization in the 60s and 70s was known under the term of modernization. And in the 90s, that term modernization has now been changed, or has become more widely understood as globalization. And week 15 will basically be doing the review and recap week. So I just wanted to give you a quick heads up on that. The map quiz again is available on Blackboard. Make sure you get that done before April the 26th at midnight. And again, our sessions will be asynchronous, which means you can log on and log off at your own convenience. But do make sure that you are posting your contribution to the discussion board page, and engaging your colleagues, responding to the postings of your colleagues on the discussion board page. So please keep a note of that. Again, make sure you take care of the map quiz before April 26th. Make sure you're posting your contribution for the weekly discussion posts for this week. Again, this is for the resource issues of global resources, energy, and natural resources. Please feel free to email me if you have any questions. David_Monda at fitnyc.edu. David_Monda at fitnyc.edu. And again, I wish you a lovely evening. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. Thank you.